now have a roster of presenters, famously Adrian and Christine and Daybreak. How do you, I mean, give us some insight into that saga in terms of you as the representative. You know, they were very successful on the BBC, and all of a sudden they find themselves doing a breakfast show on a rival channel. How does that happen?
Well, it wasn't all of a sudden. I mean, essentially that
wasn't part of the career plan.
There was no. It wasn't part of the plan. You know, essentially, Adrian came to me and we started representing him. And I remember speaking to him, and he was, the One Show was becoming very successful. He Match of the Day, very successful, and he wanted to have a show that he'd do as well to go with that. And my advice to him was, stay doing the shows you're doing. Let's try and persuade the BBC to do a new show as well. And they offered him the new show, and he had lived with the beginnings of a very difficult show, The One Show, which was its beginnings were incredibly inauspicious, and had lived and breathed it, and it became successful. He established a great relationship with Christine, and you know, I got a phone call from Jay Hunt saying, we don't want Adrian to do Fridays anymore, and Adrian wanted to do Fridays, and it was no more complicated than that. It had nothing to do with money. It was to do with he felt it was part of his show, and somebody was coming to say, I don't want you anymore.
But in circumstances like that, John,
I tell you what I did. I tried to persuade Jay Hunt to change her mind.
I was going to say
for about 9 months.
You stand back from that and you say, this is this guy's meal ticket. He's very successful. He's been there from the beginning. He does it really well. The alternative is a big empty chasm, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you know, well, I think with him, because he hosted the football brilliantly, ITV had been trying to persuade him to do the football for a while, and there'd been a previous negotiation where they'd come in for him, and the decision was to stay at the BBC. He loved doing Match of the Day, loved doing the One Show, and the BBC were going to give him a new show to do. So it was, you know, not difficult, to be honest, to say, stay doing the things you're doing. So, but unfortunately, there was someone who didn't want him to do that.
How sustainable is the BBC's talent policy? If what you say is true, and that the BBC are kind of keeping a cap on talent pay, and you're saying hit shows are difficult to get and need to be kind of protected and invested in. Do you think that's an unsustainable policy on the part of the BBC?
Well, I think the BBC can sustain the policy, but I personally think it will be to the detriment of the TV shows in the end, because you only have to see Sky throwing the money around, and artists, panel shows paying £20,000 an appearance or whatever, and you think, well, actually, take something like Little Britain, great show, 2 fantastic artists. A big mainstream comedy hit, you want to keep it. That's what the focus should be, keep the hit. And sometimes keeping a hit involves paying artists more money. But actually, the cost of replacing a hit television show is far, far greater than paying some artists some more money. And I've always believed that it's not what you pay the artists, it's how much the show costs. So if like, for example, I remember Paul O'Grady was on ITV doing a very, very successful 5 o'clock show, and it was produced by ITVP. He wanted to have his own production company. I believe that they wouldn't give it to him. They wouldn't renegotiate the deal. He went off to Channel 4, and it took them years to replace something which was a revenue generator. The BBC, similarly, if they take a view that someone who has succeeded, who after all may only have a transitory period of their career when they can get paid a lot of money, shouldn't be paid any money, then the chances are that person will go and do a new show.